Hello and welcome back to Scale Modelling Tutorials. This is episode 3, Basic Weathering, Black Wash. We're going to look at what a black wash can do for a diorama and for your aircraft and for your armour. Now I do subscribe to the idea that it's your model, you paint it however you like. And for me, when I see a pristine painted model, I really do admire it, but for the ones I do myself, I like to add a bit of realism, and a black wash is a really good way to do that. So to start with, you can use any black paint that you've got lying around and heavily water it down. What I'm using here is some Tamiya black, watered down about 5 parts to 1 water to paint to make it really washy and really watery. If you find the paint's getting a bit dark in one area, just add some more water directly to the model on top of the paint and wash it out a little bit. As you can imagine, it's much better to put light coats on and just add to it until you get to the effect you want. Now this is a 1/48 scale Airfix Spitfire that I've got painted on the sprue. The paint went on really well, and there's some holes there drilled about for when I've got to put all the bombs underneath. So I thought what I'll do here is I'll put a black wash across it, then basically wipe it off and see if I can get those panel lines and details to pop out a little bit. So starting off slowly, just putting a little bit of paint, a little bit of water on together just to see how it flows, how it looks on the model. Remember, it'll look terrible at the beginning until you start wiping it all off and wiping it back and watering it down a little bit more. But as you can see here, the pigment starts to flow and starts to adhere to the lines and the little details within the model. That's the bit where I'm looking for. So what I'll do is I'll keep rubbing the water around a little bit, and you can see there where it started to already adhere to all the lines and all the little bolt holes. So it's just a matter of keep adding, keep taking away and keep taking away, add more water, add more black until you get the effect you're looking for. It's generally at this point that I worry I've ruined the model and I start to look at it and think, oh my goodness. But what I'm using here is just a simple eraser and a little bit of water, and I'll keep evening out and rubbing it back and then adding just some water on a dry clean brush and wiping it around where I've rubbed off. Then add some more water and rub it again until it starts to fade back and just stick inside the lines. So after rubbing down with the damp cloth, here's a close-up of the finished piece on the sprue. So to weather up this tank, what I'm going to use is the Revell weathering set. I'm going to use the black pigment and water. So moving away from paint, I've put a link in the description below if you want to get your own. They're about 10 quid from Amazon. Really worth the money as well. This was the first time I'd used the weathering set, and I was just getting a feel for how the powders and pigments work. What I've found with the pigments is if I put some varnish over the top of the tank first, so here I'm using the Vallejo matte varnish. Once it's dried off, mix the pigment with some water and get it nice and thin. And the best thing about this is once you've applied it to the model, if it gets a bit thick in one area or a bit too strong, you can just add more water and wash it right back, and the pigment just dissolves in the water again. It gives you a lot of control on how it looks. The pigment moves in much the same way as the watered down paint does. It travels all along the lines, um, and sticks into all the features. In the same way as using the paint, put on lots of thin layers rather than one big thick one, and then you can decide if you need more, if you need a little less. And as it's the pigment, if you've put a bit too much on, again, as I've said, you can wash it back a little bit. Because we've put some matte varnish on the model first, the paint or the pigment won't soak directly into the paint. It'll just sit on top of the skin of the varnish, and it allows you to flow it around a little bit, and if you do have to wash it back, it doesn't ruin the paint job underneath. This wash is going on top of a very light rust wash that I put on before. Both of them together tend to look really good. So when I did my first Messerschmitt, great little kit this, the paint, it looks really good, but it's far too bright, so I did it this way by just taking the cap off the Revell 33 black. um, I just decided just to give it a little bit of a darkening, dipping in the water, dipping in the paint, wash it over and just see what sort of effect I could get, because the paint was far too bright and it made it really, really, really vivid. This was the first one I ever put a black wash on, and all the way through doing it I thought, oh, I've ruined this, it's starting to look awful. But I stuck with it and kept going, because I do think when we take a chance and we've put a lot of work in, there's probably 3 or 4 hours build work going into that, and it can be a bit of a risk when you're putting something on and you're doing something for the first time. But my advice would be just to go for it, because it's so rewarding when it goes right. While we're looking at the Messerschmitt, the straight lines were giving me a bit of trouble, so I came up with a way of masking straight lines without having to break the bank or use masking tape. And what I used was cigarette papers. But I'll do another little quick video on that, because I've used the method a few times now and it's turned out really, really well. So once I'd let it dry off and I looked at the effect, it had just taken the edge off that paint just a little bit, and it had brought out some of the lines, and I was really pleased with how it came out. Thank you very much for watching episode 3. The black wash is really useful. Please do try it out yourself on your own models. Please check the description below for all the bits I've used in this video, and for links to the Facebook group and to the Reddit group. Thank you everyone that watched the last one and gave me some more feedback. Please do that. Please comment on the video and tell me what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong. In the meantime, thanks very much. Please join me for the next one, which I think is going to be about making mud. I've had some success in making mud for the tracks on some of my tanks. So I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye bye.